From 1878 to 1968, there were 71 lake captains that called Bayview, Wisconsin, on the shore of Lake Michigan, their home. While they lived here, they captained 195 different ships, from tugboats to schooners to steamships, in voyages that took them to every one of the Great Lakes. Join us now for another episode of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we explore not only these captains, but also their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes.
Good, should be good. How does this look? How does this look here? Well, hi everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we talk about the 71 different lake captains that once lived in Bayview, Wisconsin in the age of sail and steam between 1878 and 1968. This video is sponsored by the Historic Bayview Lake Captains Society. Now, behind me here, as you can see the yellow house there, that was once the former home of a Bayview lake captain, a fishing boat captain, named Charles Rennpferd Jr. Now, Charles Rennpferd Jr. was born in 1890 on Jones Island. In fact, there's several fishermen that I have episodes on in this series, and they're all born on Jones Island, and when they were evicted from Jones Island, they moved over here. Those that are in these episodes anyway. And Charles Rennpferd Jr. was one of those. Now, Charles Rennpferd Jr.'s father a fisherman on Jones Island, died before Charles Jr. was born. His father's name was Charles. His mother was 6 months pregnant with him when his father died, and his father drowned in Lake Michigan. Charles Jr. grew up in the Rennpferd family, another established large fishing family. He and his brothers I should say, but brother Arthur, who also lived on Shore Drive a little further down. I have a separate episode on his brother Arthur. But Charles and Arthur, his other brother, I think his name was George, bought a fishing boat after they moved here. They named it after their mother, Augusta. And then in about 1922, Charles Jr. got married and moved into this house that you see here behind me. Unfortunately, in 1935, Charles Jr. was washed overboard of his fishing boat and drowned in the exact same spot that his father had also died, and neither of their bodies were ever recovered. So Charles Jr. is one of 4 Bayview Lake captains that lost their life on the lake. A sad ending. Excellent fishermen, like they all were in those days. Remember, their fishing grounds were 20 miles out into the lake. They weren't just offshore here, and they went out in all weather. So pretty strong men. They worked hard at what they did. Unfortunately, Charles lost his life, same as his dad. One other tidbit I want to mention about Charles is that he had a brother when they were on Jones Island named Otto that enlisted in the First World War in 1917 on the side of Germany. Now, for those of you that know your history, you know that America didn't come in until after that against Germany, but up to that point America wasn't involved. And his brother Otto was killed in action. I don't know exactly where, but lost his life in the First World War. So some tragic circumstances of the Rennpferd family. More coming up by Simon Stanhope is going to provide some more details, dates, those kinds of things. So stay tuned, and remember, hats off to our Bayview Lake captains. See you in the next episode. Bye.
Welcome to another installment of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we discuss the lives of the 71 different lake captains that once lived in Bayview, Wisconsin, during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, in the age of sail and steam. This discussion will include their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes. Here is the map of lake captains' homes in Bayview to show you where this episode takes place. Its location focuses primarily on the large green arrow. Today we will be discussing the life of Captain Charles Rennpferd, Jr., who was born on Jones Island. His father, a fisherman there, drowned in Lake Michigan after a fishing accident 6 months before Charles Jr. was born. After the loss, his mother became a fish peddler on the island to make ends meet. Charles Jr. later followed his father into the Jones Island fishing profession, buying a fishing boat with his brothers, which they named after their mother. 2 of the brothers, Charles Jr. and Arthur, later became Bayview Lake captains, when all Jones Islanders were forcibly evicted from the island in the early 1900s. Charles Jr. later drowned in the exact same spot his father Charles did. Another brother, Otto, was killed in the First World War, fighting for Germany, before the United States entered the conflict. Captain Charles Rennpferd, Jr. was born 20th December 1890 on Jones Island. One of 8 children, his mother was pregnant with him when his father and Jones Island fishing boat captain Charles Rennpferd Sr. drowned on 12th June 1890 after his boat Seabird was rammed by the schooner Fearless. Future Bayview Lake captain Charles Tesler was aboard the Seabird as a crewman and was thrown into the lake during the collision, but survived. When Charles Rennpferd Jr. was born, 6 months later, the now widowed Augusta Rennpferd named him after his father who drowned. Charles Jr. and his 3 older brothers, George, Arthur, and Otto, all grew up to follow their late father into the fishing business, working as fishermen for their entire lives. Arthur, Otto, and Charles Jr. all became lake captains, with Arthur and Charles Jr. becoming Bayview Lake captains after they, and all other residents of Jones Island, were forcibly evicted from about 1915 to 20. In 1908, Arthur, Charles, and George joined together to buy a fishing boat, naming it Augusta after their mother. Arthur was captain, George engineer, and Charles, the youngest, was crew. In 1920, Charles Jr., his mother Augusta, and his brothers George and Arthur left Jones Island for their first home in Bayview, located between 2551 and 2559 South Wentworth Avenue, formerly 349 Bishop Avenue, since torn down. Arthur is recorded as working as, quote, captain, lake boat, unquote. Brother Charles Jr. as, quote, manager, fishing tug, unquote. This tug was most certainly the family fishing boat, Augusta, with Arthur as captain, George as engineer, and Charles Jr. as the business manager. After 2 years there, they all moved in 1922 to what would be Charles Jr.'s second Bayview home, 2549 South Shore Drive. He likely remained there through 1926, when Arthur died. Mother Augusta and brother George continued to live at 2549 South Shore Drive until Augusta's death in 1940. There is no record of Arthur's residence after 1922. When Arthur died on Christmas Eve 1926 of unknown causes, after captaining the Augusta from 1908 to 1926, Charles Jr. took over and became sole owner and probable captain of the Augusta, with George remaining as engineer. While Charles Jr. is never found officially to be documented as captain of the Augusta, it is deduced as such since he was sole owner and George only ever documented as engineer. The next year, 1927, after taking over as owner and captain of the Augusta, Charles Jr. moved himself and his new bride and their young family to their own home at 2769 South Shore Drive, across the street from South Shore Park and 3 blocks south of his mother and brother George, at 2549 South Shore Drive. 8 years later, in 1935, Bayview Lake Captain Charles Rennpferd Jr. would, like his father, also drown, incredibly at the same location his father drowned 45 years before. He was washed overboard, and his body was never recovered. As Charles Jr. was drowning, he would have known he was nearing the fate of his father, whom he was named after, but had never met. Charles Rennpferd Jr. married wife Beulah in about 1925, and they had 3 children, Charles III, Ardis, and Arthur. When he died, they were ages 10, 7, and 6, respectively. After his death, wife Beulah, 15 years his junior, remained living at 2769 South Shore Drive for at least another year, through 1936, finding work as a nurse. Her sister Isabel lived with Beulah, the children, and Charles Jr., and was working as a nurse in a clinic, so it's probable that Isabel helped Beulah find work after Charles Jr.'s death. Captain Charles Rennpferd Jr.'s body, like that of his father's, was never recovered after he drowned. The family nevertheless memorialised him with a large gravestone at the Rennpferd family plot at Forest Home Cemetery that is engraved simply with Charles Jr.'s name, birth and death date. Also buried in the plot are his brother Arthur and mother Augusta. Of interest, one of his other brothers, Otto, who also became a lake captain, though on Jones Island and not Bayview, was killed in the First World War, fighting for Germany. He enlisted in the German military sometime after 1915, his last recorded date in Milwaukee and Jones Island. America didn't enter the war until 2 years later, in 1917, and at the time Otto left to fight for Germany, America was still neutral. Thanks for watching. This photograph isn't about Bayview or its lake captains, but it's from the same era of Great Lakes maritime history. We thought we'd close with it for enjoyment, as it captures the spirit of the era. If you'd like to read more details about Captain Charles Rennpferd, Jr., as well as the sources for the information contained in today's video, you can find these and more in the book Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, for sale now, by individual volumes in both e-book and paperback, on both Amazon.com and HenschelHouseBooks.com. All proceeds from book sales go to support various maritime history projects related to Bayview's lake captains. One of these is a plaque and marker with the captains' names and addresses on it, as part of the creation of the Bayview Lake Captains Historic District, which will be the first of its kind in America. If you would like to contribute to support these projects, to include this and other markers honouring Bayview's lake captains, with 100% of all donations and contributions in all forms going to support them, please consider contributing to us through the listings found on our website under the Contribute button, as well as in the end credits at the conclusion of this video. Note, we are not a 501c3, so contributions are not tax-deductible. If, for some reason, we are unable to secure these markers, then all funds donated to this site will be given as a cash donation to the museum ship SS City of Milwaukee in Manistee, Michigan. This is the only surviving intact ship that was once captained by a Bayview lake captain, and in its case was captained by at least 2, and likely 3, totaling over 20 years between them. Finally, we also have free self-guided walking tours of Bayview's 71 lake captains' homes, using only your phone. It's simple and easy. Just go to our website shown here, find the item on the menu bar at the upper left named Free Self-Guided Walking Tours, and then scroll down to find the map with the instructions. Zoom in by street. When you find a captain's house you're interested in, click on it and details appear on the right, along with a link to the YouTube episode from this channel that provides the biography of the captain that lived there. It's free, fun, and available any time you are out walking. Just bring along your phone. I'm Simon Stanhope, narrator for these episodes. Join us again soon for the next chapter of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains.